And U.S. Special Forces just captured a militant accused of playing a key role in the deadly Benghazi attacks.
Kelly Wright joins us live from Washington, D.C. with more on the upcoming trial. Kelly?
Jillian and Rob, good morning to you. On Sunday, U.S. Special Operations Forces and FBI agents on a joint mission captured Mustafa al-Imam at an unknown location in Libya. Al-Imam is believed to be a member of the Islamic militant group Ansar al-Sharia, which claims it carried out the 9/11 attacks in Benghazi 5 years ago. 4 Americans were killed in that attack. U.S. Ambassador Christopher Stevens, Glenn Doherty, Sean Smith, and Tyrone Woods. President Trump gave the orders for the operation. In a statement, the president says, "To the families of these fallen heroes, I want you to know that your loved ones are not forgotten, and they will never be forgotten. Our memory is deep and our reach is long, and we will not rest in our efforts to find and bring the perpetrators of the heinous attacks in Benghazi to justice." The Trump administration's vigorous investigation is different from the Obama administration, which has been criticized for the way it responded. Several congressional investigations tried to determine if it willfully misled the public when former UN Ambassador Susan Rice blamed the attack on a controversial video.
There was a hateful video, a direct result of a heinous and offensive video. This is a response to a hateful and offensive video. Violent protest outside of our embassy sparked by this hateful video.
Current U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions says it was a barbaric attack that shocked the American people, adding this in a statement: "The United States will continue to investigate and identify all those who were involved in the attack, and we will hold them accountable for their crimes." The Attorney General also says al-Imam will be brought to Washington, D.C. and charged in federal court and be prosecuted. Another man, Ahmed Abu Khatala, went on trial last month here in D.C. for his alleged role as the mastermind of the Benghazi attack. Rob and Jillian, back to you.
All right, Kelly. Thank you. Paul Manafort now under house arrest along with former business partner Rick Gates after pleading not guilty to conspiracy and money laundering charges.
Yeah, it was a big day Monday. This as the White House insists that the charges have nothing to do with President Trump. Distancing themselves from this mess, Griff Jenkins is live in Washington with the breaking developments this morning. Hey, Griff.
Hey, Rob and Jillian. What a day in Washington as these first charges drop in Mueller's investigation. Manafort and Gates pleaded not guilty to 12 counts ranging from conspiracy against the United States to money laundering in a scheme dating back to 2006 while working for a pro-Russian Ukrainian politician. White House Chief of Staff John Kelly speaking out for the first time with Laura Ingraham last night. Here's what he had to say.
All of the activities, as I understand it, that they were indicted for was long before they ever met Donald Trump or had any association with the campaign. But I think the reaction of the administration is let the legal justice system work. Everyone's innocent till presumed innocent, and we'll see where it goes.
Outside the courthouse, Manafort's attorney echoed the sentiment at the White House.
President Donald Trump was correct. There is no evidence that Mr. Manafort or the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian government.
And the president sounded off on Twitter, calling for an investigation into Hillary Clinton and the Democrats, writing, quote, "Sorry, but this is years ago before Paul Manafort was part of the Trump campaign. But why aren't crooked Hillary and the Dems the focus? Also, there is no collusion." Then came more news from the special counsel. A former campaign advisor, George Papadopoulos, pleaded guilty earlier this month to charges of lying to the FBI about his communication with Russian officials. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders downplaying his role.
It was extremely limited. It was a volunteer position. And again, no activity was ever done in an official capacity on behalf of the campaign in that regard.
In a final development turns towards Democrats, powerful lobbyist Tony Podesta stepping down from his firm, the Podesta Group, because his name has surfaced in Mueller's probe. Guys.
More to come from this.
Yeah, Griff, thanks so much.
Thank you, Griff. Well, the question many people are now asking, who is next?
That's right. Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce joined us earlier, and she weighed in.
I do think there'll be more indictments. I think that Mike Flynn, who has had an illustrious career, it's been an awful situation for him, but it seems like he's been involved in some shenanigans. And I think Mr. Podesta, Tony Podesta, will find himself, at least he's behaving as though he expects something to happen to him.
Democratic power lobbyist Tony Podesta is stepping down from his own lobbying firm amid accusations he did not disclose his work for a Ukrainian group also tied to Paul Manafort.
All very interesting. And while the left and the mainstream media continue to push a Trump-Russia collusion and have been really almost for about a year now.
Well, that's right. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich says this is a chance for Robert Mueller to prove he's not just out to get President Trump, he's out to go after those responsible.
Now we have a chance for Mueller to prove he really is nonpartisan. He has a chance to prove it.
Yes, sir.
He goes after Tony Podesta, then he goes after Tony's brother John, then he goes down the list of the Clinton people. The most sobering thing about this entire unbelievable scandal is if she had won, none of this would be coming out. I mean, think about it. They would have covered it up. They would have continued to corrupt the FBI. They would have continued to corrupt the Justice Department. We would have learned nothing about how horrible this is, and they would have continued, I think, to sell out America's interests. It is an astonishing gap, and people who wonder about whether or not it was important that President Trump won, you think about the difference between what we're learning now and what would have been covered up by Hillary Clinton.
All right, former House Speaker there. A quick break from politics here for a second. The Mandalay Bay security guard and only eyewitness in the Las Vegas shooting, Jesus Campos, has been pretty tight-lipped about sharing his story.
You're talking about it now, and then you're not going to talk about it again, and I don't blame you, because why relive this over and over again?
Well, it appears he'll have to talk about it again, and this time it'll be under oath. Campos being subpoenaed by an attorney representing one of the victims to testify about what happened in the moments leading up to the shooting that killed 58 concert-goers in Vegas. The Mandalay Bay Hotel facing several lawsuits claiming authorities did not react fast enough.
Representatives from some of the biggest names in social media in the hot seat starting today. Lawyers from Facebook, Twitter, and Google will be questioned over the role Russia played on their platforms during the 2016 election. Lawmakers want to know how the Russians were able to target ads meant to divide American voters.
All right, the United States pledging $60 million to support counterterrorism efforts in Africa's Sahel region. That's where 4 U.S. servicemen were killed in a terrorist attack earlier this month. An analyst for Fox News, Waleed Phares, warns the region could turn into the, quote, next reservoir for jihadi terror. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says, quote, defeating terrorism depends on making sure terrorist organizations cannot have safe havens on any continent.
New questions raised this morning about the rescue of 2 women lost at sea for 5 months.
The crew of the USS Ashland saved our lives.
The Coast Guard saying the boat's emergency beacon that provides the vessel's location was never turned on. The device is typically activating when submerged in water or can be turned on manually. The sailors also claiming to have survived a tropical storm during the first day at sea, though the National Weather Service has no record of such an event.
Okay, let's talk some weather now, and power could be out for days in the Northeast as people clean up from a pretty bad storm.
Yeah, hurricane-force winds and rain toppled thousands of trees and power lines onto homes and cars overnight Sunday from Pennsylvania all the way up through Maine.
That's right. Janice Dean is here now, and Janice, you got your costume on.
Nice.
You're looking pretty good today, but we did have a pretty nasty storm move through.
Yes.
And it dumped rain, a lot of wind.
Absolutely. We'll talk about Halloween later on, but first of all, yeah, we have some cold air behind this storm system that brought damage as well as power outages across the Northeast. The good news is the worst of this storm is out of the way. On the backside, we still have some snow across the Great Lakes and our next system moving out of the Rockies we're going to watch. But the good news is we're not dealing with any big winter storms or big storms this Halloween, so most kids should be okay for trick-or-treating. Again, we're going to watch the potential for some showers across South Texas and Louisiana, a little bit of snow if you live across the Northwest and the Rockies area as well as the upper Midwest, but we don't have any big storm systems systems, which is good news. But you know what? I grew up in Canada. I'm used to wearing snowsuits underneath the costumes. So as long as you get them a little bit bigger, it's all good. But there's your forecast today. And real quick, I'll show you your Halloween forecast, your trick-or-treat forecast. Snow across the Northwest, maybe across the central U.S. as well, but no big storm systems. You might need your umbrella if you live in Houston. Happy Halloween!
Love your outfit, Janice.
Listen, this is the the one day of the year that I don't have to dress up.
That took us both a minute. That's
yeah, we got it.
Okay.
Janice, thanks so much.
The time is now 11 minutes after the hour. We'll get it together, I promise. From the dirty dossier to joining forces with ISIS, the left is proving it has no limits on its assault on President Trump. Ed Klein, the man who wrote the book on the all-out war, joins us live next.
Yeah, some very interesting observations here coming from him. And Army deserter Bowe Bergdahl apologizes to the soldiers wounded in the recovery missions that brought him home. But do his words mean anything now? We're going to talk about that. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Waltz led the search for Bowe Bergdahl, and he joins us live to react. Coming up.
And first, white kids aren't allowed to be Moana for Halloween. Now the PC police says dressing up as Elsa is racist too. Where does it stop?
But first, here's some Halloween photos from over the weekend. Actually, this is, well, for me over the weekend. This was me at a Halloween party with a couple of friends.
Nice.
That's a Droob from the Clockwork Orange.
For me, a long time ago. Let's see. I am a clown. Yep, with my brother and my grandparents. My mom handmade our costumes.
So
Isn't that adorable? President Trump hasn't even been in office a full year yet, but that hasn't stopped the deep state from waging an all-out war against him, even meeting with ISIS and al-Qaeda leaders to take him down.
Yeah, it's a pretty big revelation in this new book, All Out War, The Plot to Destroy Trump. Author Ed Klein lays out the plan to take down the 45th president, and he joins us now to discuss. Thank you, sir, for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And let me first bring up just a quote from your book here, which is a pretty serious allegation here in this book. It says, ties between three key leaders of the Oakland group, which this is a far leftist group in Oakland, met in Hamburg, Germany, with a leader of the al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. There is evidence from informants that the AQAP, Arab Peninsula leader, is helping the Oakland group acquire the weapons they are seeking, primarily bomb-making equipment and toxic chemicals and gases. So you've got people in the United States and a far-left group meeting with ISIS leaders?
Yes. You remember when President Trump was so severely criticized after Charlottesville for saying that the danger on left-wing violent groups equal the danger on the right? Well, it turns out he was right, because there is an FBI report that I've published in this new book that talks about these groups, these left-wing groups, get combat training on a par nearly the same as ISIS, and that there is a collusion between these groups and ISIS and al-Qaeda. And the reason they know this is that the FBI sent a whole contingent of agents to Europe in this summer, and they discovered that groups from Oakland, California and other places in America traveled to Europe, met in Syria with al-Qaeda and ISIS, and got training in bomb making and toxic chemicals.
So here's the question. If they're going to go to such great lengths to take down President Trump, the American people are going to feel some of this. Should we be afraid of this, of what you're telling us right now?
I think so. And this is exactly what President Trump has been trying to say, that yes, there is problems on the right with white supremacists. We know that. None of us are trying to support that. But we've got to look at the left as well and see that this anti-Trump syndrome has gotten way out of control, and that these left-wing violent anarchist groups are spread throughout the entire United States, many of them on college campuses.
And this is way more than just anti-Trump. I mean, when you're colluding with ISIS,
well, that's what I mean.
That's as despicable as I can even imagine. Let's go to the second quote from the book here. We don't have it? Okay.
I have it right here.
We'll put it up right here, yeah. The Bureau has gotten actionable intelligence that there is within the federal government a growing and organized movement to block or interfere with administration policy decisions. Obviously, there is a huge anti-Trump movement in this country.
Well, you know, there's been this criticism that when Donald Trump and others talk about the deep state, that they're making this whole thing up. Well, the FBI has actually infiltrated the deep state. And there's a report in my new book about this. They've taken part in meetings, undercover, of course, in Washington where members of the deep state, and these are rogue elements in the permanent bureaucracy, are trying to stop Trump's programs from being carried out in the Justice Department against sanctuary cities, in the IRS, and in other regulatory agencies.
Well, it sounds like a very interesting book, All Out War, The Plot to Destroy Trump.
It's definitely, eye-opening, that's for sure.
So much.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Okay, 19 minutes after the hour right now, even George Washington no longer safe from the PC police.
I think it's just very, very dangerous, and it shows you what, how much of a lack of appreciation of history and what history is.
Why General John Kelly says even America's darkest days deserve to be remembered.
And President Trump getting some unexpected support from a Hollywood A-lister. Carly Shimkus is here with Bryan Cranston's message to unite America.
But first, as we try to lighten things